And forasmuch as meat and drink are transmuted in us daily into spiritual substance, I believe in the miracle of the Mass. Stop the presses. Did you hear that? Why does it say we believe in the miracle of the Mass? Here's the definition of the organic and mechanical processes behind this magic. How are meat and drink transmuted in us daily into spiritual substance? Our bodies are alchemical laboratories that extract the energy of the sun from the food we eat and the liquids we drink to strengthen and sustain us. The miracle of the Mass uses the same process. Remember what I said in the introduction about the magical laws that govern the physical processes of the body are the same laws that govern processes taking place on more subtle planes? We are affirming here that we understand the central magical act of the Mass is the Eucharist, the absorption of the power and energy of the entire operation by eating the host and drinking the wine, the body and blood of God.
And I confess one baptism of wisdom, whereby we accomplish the miracle of incarnation.
So perfect is this Eucharist that it's capable of creating the material basis for an incarnating soul. On the physical plane, that material basis is the living body of a human baby. On other planes, the Eucharist creates the material basis for the incarnating soul of the desired object of the operation, a magical child.
And I confess my life one, individual, and eternal, that was, and is to come.
Each of us is a point on a ribbon of evolving life, stretching infinitely behind us and infinitely before us. Each cell of our blood is a Noah's Ark that rescues and protects for a brief moment this evolving superlife. Our life is one, individual and eternal, that was and is to come. And here we're affirming that we are conscious of that fact.
Aum, aum, aum. When I am personally playing the role of the priestess, at this I mentally affirm the object of my operation as the priestess. In the name of my holy guardian angel, I intend that this Mass really works, that the communicants will achieve their true wills and heart's desire. Then I just walk out and hope I don't get too blissed out and forget my lines.
Before the deacon entered at the beginning of the ceremony, I step into the false back of the tomb and try to calm down and center myself for what's to come. I have my lance in my hand, and I keep it resting on the floor until I hear the 3 aumings. Then I raise the lance so that the tip is even with the top of my head, and close my eyes until the veil is parted.
Music is now played. The child enters with the ewer and the salt.
The negative child bears the passive elements of water and earth.
The virgin enters with the sword and the paten.
At this point, she is identified as the Virgin. At the very beginning of the Mass, the priestess is a virgin, and the priest is dead. We've already discussed the sword and paten.
The child enters with the censer and the perfume.
The positive child bears the active elements of fire and air. They face the deacon, deploying into line from a space between the 2 altars.
The Virgin says, "Greeting of earth and heaven." The priestess is everything, woman and goddess. She comes in as a messenger from the crown. Crowley says of the crown, quote, "Its secret truth is that earth is heaven as heaven is earth, and shows the aspirant to himself as being a star." And in the Book of Thoth, he he says, quote, "The high priestess is the intelligible radiance of the holy guardian angel." In this quote from the book Meditation as Medicine, quote, "The great Eastern thinkers said that the universe and all things in it, including our bodies, are forever moving from the yin condition to that of the yang, and then back again in a ceaseless cycle of change. As the philosopher Lao Tzu said, the ceaseless intermingling of heaven, yang, and earth, yin, gives form to all things. This cycle of change is thought to be as inexorable as the changing seasons and the cycle of night and day. The constant change is not chaotic, but is orderly and predictable and infuses all things with energy, just as the changing seasons invigorate and nurture the earth. In the body, this constant change is experienced as the mix of opposing forces that swirls the chakras and brings the energy of the cosmos into our physical and ethereal selves."
With the greeting of earth and heaven, we're reminded of Nuit's salutation in the first chapter of the Book of the Law. "This shall regenerate the world, the little world, my sister, my heart, and my tongue, unto whom I send this kiss."
All gives a hailing sign of a magician, the deacon leading. The priestess, the negative child on her left, the positive child on her right, ascends the steps of the high altar. They await her below. She places the paten before the grail. Not in back of the grail, not to the left of the grail, not to the right of the grail, but not even separated from the grail. She places the paten before the grail. Having adored it, she descends, and with the children following her, the positive next to her, she moves in a serpentine manner, involving 3 1/2 circles of the temple, Deosil about the altar, Widdershins about font, Deosil about altar and font, Widdershins about altar, and so to the tomb in the west. The priestess formulates the universe with her spiral dance between the active and the passive, representing the reproductive process and the equilibrium between change and stability. She then creates the world by implementing the 4 elements, fire and air, salt of earth, and water, thereby making the bed for the work to begin. Then she goes to wake up the dead priest.
According to the yogis, the goddess Kundalini, once awakened, ascends like a serpent to the brain in a coil that is 3 1/2 times around the spinal column, all the while igniting chakras all the way up. Instead of viewing this serpentine movement as invoking or banishing, I believe it is more in the order of a dance that establishes a vortex of energy in the form of a helix or a double helix. If we remember the image of the goddess Nuit on Crowley's tarot card The Universe, we see a double helix formed by her dance. This double helix is the fabric of space itself. Modern physics hints that the universe is not so much an expanding sphere, but more along the lines of a twisted saddle or a double helix. In other words, I believe that by her movements, the priestess is literally creating a universe in order to have a place to celebrate Mass.
And so to the tomb in the west.
A tomb in the west. Wow. For people who are seeing the Mass for the first time, the sight of an upright coffin in the West is pretty freaky. They're even more unnerved when a guy in a white robe walks out of the tomb with a stick in his hand. The image, however, is as old as organized religion, especially Egyptian and Babylonian religion.
She draws her sword and pulls down the veil therewith.
She draws the sword, wielding the power of her will and using her powers of reason and discrimination. The priestess initiates the working. She is the ultimate operator of the magic, for without this act of conscious will, the Mass would never begin.
The Priestess, by the power of iron.
Blood is iron rich.
I say unto thee, arise.
Blood engorges the phallus, causing erection. Like Ishtar resurrecting Hormuz, Isis resurrecting Osiris, our goddess-to-be magically raises her husband from the dead.
In the name of our Lord, the Sun,
the celestial Lord of life,
and of our Lord,
the phallus, terrestrial Lord of life. In 2 other places in the Mass, the priestess also draws 3 crosses on the body of the priest. In those places, she draws first over the forehead, second at the breast, and third over the body along the median line of his chakras, or psychic centers.
That thou mayest administer the virtues to the brethren. She is informing him of his number 1 purpose in the Mass, to administer the virtues to the brethren. She is acting as his holy guardian angel, waking him up and showing him his will.
For the purpose of the public or group ceremony, the priestess charges the priest with the duty of administering the virtues to the brethren. In a private celebration, there are no brethren present, and this duty, which takes up so large a portion of this public ceremony, and gives a false impression that the priest is monopolizing the magic, this duty is completely internalized.
She sheathes the sword.
Once she's awakened the priest of her choice, she voluntarily sets aside the tool of logic and reason, a necessary preliminary to falling in love.
Crowley wrote, quote, "The mind, symbolized by the sword, must inform the understanding, which then presents a simple idea to the will," unquote. The priest, issuing from the tomb, holding the lance erect with both hands, right over left, against his breast, takes the first 3 regular steps.
Holding the lance like the mummified Osiris holds his staff, the priest issues from the tomb. The steps originally refer specifically to the level of his OTO mastership and reveal he's been raised from death to life.
He then gives the lance to the priestess and gives the 3 penal signs.
Again, the signs refer specifically to the level of his OTO mastership. For a public celebration, these are blinds for those signs.
He then kneels.
Kneeling, of course, is a passive position.
And worships the lance with both hands.
Now, this is usually interpreted as holding his hands in the attitude of prayer, the lance being sandwiched between them.
Penitential music.
This is music that they play in prison. Just kidding. The priest says, "I am a man among men. I 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 am a man among men." Are you talking to me? Are you talking to me? He again takes the lance and lowers it. In the symbolism of chivalric pageantry, the lowering of the lance is a salute. He rises. The priest says, "How should I be worthy to administer the virtues to the brethren?" It's almost like he's saying, "Ah, shucks, out of all the tombs and all the gin joints in the whole world, you picked mine. I'm just a guy. You're so beautiful. I'm not worthy. I'm not worthy." Well, the priestess then proceeds to clean him up and get him worthy.
The priestess takes from the child the water and the salt.
The passive elements.
And mixes them in the font.
Now the font stands at the yesod station of the Mass temple. Yesod is the moon, the mother.
The priestess says, "Let the salt of earth admonish the water to bear the virtue of the great sea," and she genuflects. Recall that the pregnant empress in the Thoth tarot forms the symbol of alchemical salt with her arms. And in Liber Aleph it says, "Cleanse therefore thine heart, O my son, in the waters of the great sea, and enkindle it with the fire of the Holy Ghost." Our holy prophet also said, quote, "Nature understands herself by becoming self-conscious in her units, and the consciousness loses its sense of separateness by dissolution in her," unquote. It may be that dissolution is the virtue of the great sea.
And what is the great sea? Bina. Across the abyss, big black mama Bina, the home of Babylon Nuit. And what does Babylon hold in her hand? The Holy Grail. And what is the Holy Grail that Babylon gets drunk on? And what's in that grail? The blood of the martyrs, the totality of life evolving, and of evolving humanity. And what is blood mostly made up of? Salt water, sea water. And what does a baby float in for 9 moons? Salt water, sea water.
The Hindu goddess Shakti is all and everything. There is one mother, creator of all things. From her, everything that exists was born. To her, all things will return. Galaxies, stars, mountains, seas, plants, animals, humans, gods, are all her creations. Every leaf, each living cell, every pulse of the blood, every molecular love affair, each fizzing electron is sustained by her. She gives life and takes it. With the myriad forms, loving and terrible, she is known by untold numbers of names and honored in countless shrines. She is the primordial ground of being from which everything and even nothing springs. Hers is the primeval energy of the universe that drives all divine and cosmic evolution. Supreme being, single source, and controller of all the forces and potentialities of nature. She is Shakti, the great goddess of the Tantrics. She is Parvati, lovely beyond imagination, who, because her limbs were dark, was given the pet name of Kali, the Dark One. She is the one with whom all creation begins. And that's from the Great Book of Tantra by Indra Sina.
Is it any wonder that the priestess then says,
"Mother, be thou adored." She returns to the west. She makes crosses on priest with open hand.
Notice the priestess makes her gestures with an open hand. The priest, as we shall see, does an entirely different thing with his hands.
Over his forehead, breast, and body.
Notice again the median line of the chakras, and the median and the middle pillar, Kether, Tifereth, and Yesod, or Yesod Malkuth or Malkuth.
Be the priest pure of body and soul.
In magic, we first purify with water, then we consecrate with fire.
The priestess takes the censer from the child.
Here comes the fire.
And places it on the small altar.
The small altar is in the Tifereth station of the Mass temple. Tifereth, of course, is our Father the Son.
She puts incense therein and genuflects.
Here comes the air.
Let the fire and the air make sweet the world. The warm, sweet breath of the Father that animates all life.
The active elements are now united. In the act of uniting the 4 elements into 2 substances, the priestess establishes the pattern for what is about to take place with the officers. It's the old Yod-He-Vav-He.
The Hindu god Shiva is the annihilation of opposites. He is simultaneously holy yet outcast, God yet beggar, sober yet intoxicated, lord of the ever-erect phallus yet supremely detached yogi. Ever gracious, ever blissful Lord, whose compassion is like an ocean of nectar, whose body shines white as camphor and the jasmine flower, purest truth, robed in space, omnipresent, loving and beloved Lord of yogis, whose coiled and matted hair is drenched by spray from the torrents of Ganga, adorned with ashes, garlanded with snakes and human skulls, three-eyed Lord of the triple world, trident in one hand, in the other blessing, embodiment of gnosis, giver of nirvana, everlasting, pure, flawless, amiable, benefactor to all that lives, God of gods. That's also. Father, be thou adored. She returns west and makes cross with censer before the priest, thrice as before.
This makes a total of 9 crosses she's drawn over his chakras and middle pillar. This may or may not point to the 3 triads of the OTO and the 9th degree.
A total of 9 crosses may mean the physical body of the priest. His foundation has just been built for him of the 4 elements. A quote from the Laws for All is, "The secret truth of this foundation is that stability is identical with change. Of this we are reminded by the fact that any multiple of 9 has 9 for the sum of its digits. Be the priest fervent of body and soul." The priestess turns on the part of the priest where, according to the Laws for All, quote, "the sex consciousness abides untouched, the true foundation of the temple of his body, the root of the tree of life that grows from earth to heaven."
Excellent word, fervent. It means passionate, burning, eager, fiery, glowing. She is starting a fire in the priest. Things are moving fast for the priest, just like things move fast when a baby is born. Not only has he been purified and consecrated, he has literally been born of water with the purification of the font, and he has taken his first breath of life with the consecration of the fire altar. And God blew the breath of life into the nostrils of Adam, and man became a living soul. The Hebrew word for blood is spelled Daleth Mem. Add an aleph, the letter of air, the letter of breath, and DM becomes ADM, Adam or man.
The children resume their weapons as they are done with. The deacon now takes the consecrated robe from high altar and brings it to her. Previously, in the description of the setup of the high altar, no mention was made of the robe or crown. We set the folded robe in the center of the high altar with the crown on top of it. She robes the priest in his robe of scarlet and gold. Scarlet and gold, the color of the heart and the sun.
Notice the similarities to the classic tarot image of the magician. Red, the color of desire, passion, and activity. Gold, the color of the sun.
Be the flame of the sun thine ambience, O thou priest of the sun.
The priest with a body and mind is now given a heart, where his soul is to dwell, radiating light on the 6 spheres which surround it, the symbol of the sun itself. Now that the priest is a living, breathing soul, his subtle bodies are now activated. A solar ambience, or aura, radiates around him, and with the addition of the Uraeus serpent crown, his chakras, if not activated at this point, are at least installed.
The deacon brings the crown from the high altar. The crown may be of gold,
The sun,
or platinum, or of electrum magicum,
theoretically equal parts of the 7 planetary metals.
but with no other metal save the small proportions necessary to a proper alloy. It may be adorned with divers jewels at will, but it must have the Uraeus serpent twined about it,
to represent the serpent Kundalini, raised to the level of the Ajna Chakra, or even the 1,000-petaled lotus.
and the cap of maintenance must match the scarlet of the robe. Its texture should be velvet. Be the serpent thy crown, O thou priest of the Lord. The serpent is a symbol of divinity and royalty. It is also a symbol of Hadit. From the book of the law, I am the snake that giveth knowledge and delight and bright glory, and stir the hearts of men with drunkenness. The priest is beginning to identify himself with Hadit, the Kundalini, the central magical force in man.
He is called the priest of the Lord, and let's not forget who the Lord is. There, she's finished building a priest. Soon she'll be ready to take him out for a spin. Like great goddesses of the past, she has used love, the strength of her will and intellect, to transform this unruly ex-convict from the prison of matter into a potential celestial husband. But here, early in the Mass, he's just all dressed up with no place to go. It's time for her to raise the stakes and move this foreplay to a higher frequency. To do that, she must switch her polarities from active to passive.
Kneeling.
She demonstrates her new passive polarity by kneeling.
She takes the lance between her open hands and runs them up and down the shaft 11 times, very gently.
Do we need to draw us a picture here of what's going on? Everyone in the room knows what's happening. I remember once we were doing a mass to marry some people, and they invited both parents of both sides of both the bride and groom had their parents come, and they had no idea what this mass was going to be about. As a matter of fact, one of the fathers, I believe the father of the bride, was a Baptist minister, and but anyway, we got a kick out of them, and they were very polite, and they were all dressed up, and we gave them the best seats in the house, and
hats. Women even had hats.
Women had beautiful hats on, yes, and so it was a very, very, very for us a very big mass. The place was packed, and Constance had gotten me out of the tomb, and she was kneeling before me there, and she was rubbing the lance there 11 times, and all of the people that usually come to Mass and our OTO brothers and sisters were sitting very politely during this part of the service. But the women that came with the parents of the bride and groom were watching Constance stroke the lance, and they were breathing extremely heavy.
Some were even fanning themselves.
Some were fanning themselves with their missile. And it's odd. I've never seen.
They put up with the script so far, but they couldn't quite handle it up after this.
It was the Baptists that seemed to be raising all of the sexual energy in the room. Well, be that as it may.
They also left.
They left early. Yes.
They were polite, though. She is activating his and her chakras. Electricity is created by the friction, and lightning strikes. As Dr. Frankenstein said, "It's alive!" Well, actually, she says, "Be the Lord present among us."
The weapon of the priest of the Lord now becomes the Lord. And here we have one of the key elements in our recipe that is critical to the eventual creation of an apple pie. It doesn't matter how effeminate the priest is or how butch the priestess is. It's not a matter of bigotry or homophobia or style or philosophy or political correctness or social evolution that dictates the gender of our officers. It is simply a matter of equipment. This is not to say that there are not magical acts where the vagina or the tongue or the anus or the nipples or the armpits or earlobes or the pituitary or pineal glands are the Lord, but not this ceremony. At this moment, in the overtly sexual context of the magical operation represented by Liber 15, the Lord is present in the erected phallus. But before we get too carried away with our worship of the Lord, let's remember that the Lord is just one member of the team, a tool that will help create a child. And it is the child that will be the true object of our worship. And as I mentioned earlier, there are infinite ways to execute this secret of all creative acts besides those that are overtly sexual. Amen. I'll give hailing sign. So mote it be.
I'll give the hailing sign, and the people say, so mote it be.